So I want to talk to you guys today about police violence and also racial justice in the U.S. from my personal experience and also from what I've learned, and I hope that it can be helpful to you. As you guys know, and as we've all seen in the U.S. this past week, it's been unfortunate that we have seen so easily the loss of life by police thus far, and a lot of people are wondering what the solutions are. And there's two different kinds of solutions that I see. So I want to briefly mention those to you, and then we'll move on to some bigger topics. But first is those that I think are surface level changes. Certain things like having more community engagement within the police force and things like that don't change the big issues of policing. And so I think we have to be aware of those as we go forward. I think one of the biggest concerns with policing is that there is a lack of accountability with police officers. If and when police officers make a mistake, a lot of times they deal with it in-house. So if it was the Denver Police Department, then the Denver Police Department deals with it. They have their own investigators, and they deal with it themselves. And in that way, they're not accountable to us. And in that way, the vast majority of people who have died unethically, unarmed, have not been given justice, and the police officers who've killed them continue to police. And so that to me is the biggest things that we have to see. One major improvement that happened several years ago is that police officers started wearing body cams. Cameras on their uniforms, cameras on their cars, and that made a lot of difference. It makes such a difference that we can see with our eyes what's happening. At the same time, we see in a lot of departments, they withhold the body camera footage. They withhold the video footage because it's their choice to deal with it in-house. And that's why I say the biggest issue that we see with policing is the lack of accountability. To me, I don't see any meaningful change that can happen within the police force until every time someone dies in police custody, that case is sent to an independent investigator, someone who's not paid by the police department, the local police department, someone who is paid either federally or by the state. To me, that's the biggest change that we can see, and I hope that that's something that we see very soon. Other than that, two more changes that we can see. Number one is that we're seeing a lot of trouble with if someone gets fired in Minnesota, they can come to Colorado and work. That is something so unacceptable, and federally we need to see from the country some accountability where your record is going to follow you. If I commit a crime in Colorado and if I get pulled over in Nevada, they're going to find me. You know, I don't get to just have a clean record. And in the same way, a police should be accountable for their previous actions as well. Okay, so I want to talk about, especially growing up in the Ethiopian community, and about our perceptions of our race. Are we black? Are we not black? And how does that lead into the police conversation as a whole? We want to help. We see that something wrong is going on, but before we can really, in a meaningful way, help our cities, help our neighbors, we should take some time to reflect about what's going on within us. And so, for me, I grew up in a very strong Ethiopian community. I had a lot of awareness of my own culture. I was extremely proud of it, just as I was taught to be proud of being Habesha. And I did not spend a lot of time thinking about my race as a black person. I didn't think about that a lot. And I had a lot of peers my own age. There was maybe 20 people graduating 12th grade with me, and we were all extremely spiritual, very strong in our faith, and we were extremely academic successful. Some of the people, of the 20 of us, we all went to major universities and colleges, a lot of them Ivy League, And there was a lot of pride in our excellence. I know that everyone felt their community support, that they were excellent, that they were spiritual, that we were on the right track. We felt a lot of that. But it wasn't long from beginning college that we started to think again about what was going on. We started to notice when we left the safety of our community and we were in these universities that were majority predominantly white, and we started to take the classes with these professors, we really we had a fast education about race. By the time Christmas happened, just 4 months into our university program, we came back home and we talked and we shared stories. There was not one person who had not experienced racism, who I graduated with. Not just that we were experiencing racism between someone called me a mean name, they made me feel like this. We started really seeing the separation. And what I thought was a very strong and independent class, we started really dealing with the same kind of problems that our African American peers went through. And I think that's a surprise, and that's a struggle for many Ethiopians, because we really have a lot of pride in being exceptional. Compared to African Americans, we are exceptional in academics, in our morals. We have that pride, but it didn't pan out forever. And so it really led me to believe, because we all had the same upbringing, we had the same morals, we had the same values. Is it just that there was a failure on one of our parts, or for all of us who went to schools in different states, in different cities? Mine was a Christian university, others were secular universities. We all had different experiences, but we were seeing the same thing. What was going on in common with all of us that we all experienced the same thing? By the second year of my college experience, a young boy named Trayvon Martin was killed. Another man, Mike, and Freddie Gray, and Tamir Rice, who was just 12 years old, they were all killed by police while being unarmed. And that was something we were all wrestling with. We could see the video camera. Sometimes people killed in the back as they're running away. Sometimes people who were just children. Sometimes they were by police. Other times they were by people who thought that they had the authority to be a police just because they wanted to. And all of these things made me very critical of race and understanding. I am Ethiopian. I'm also black. What did I learn about being black growing up? And I want to share a couple of those things with you today. One of the things that I learned early on, first of all, is that we're not black necessarily, we're brown. I heard that message early. And the person who said it was very proud when they said it. You're brown. As if, no, you're not black. As if there's something wrong with being black. Why did they think that? Another common, easy thing that people say, don't be in the sun, you're going to get dark. There's something apparent that we all believe about darkness and lightness. That we should protect light skin, that light skin is superior. Why do we think that? Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., he talks about even the words black and the words white. What is the symbol that we give them in our culture? Black, often we associate it with grief. White, we associate it with innocence, with purity. Does that impact the way we talk about race? Does it impact the way that we see one another? Even in the word, there is a depth. And the question that we have to ask is that, how do these concepts serve us? Does it make us better to think of lightness, light skin, whiteness as better? Does it help us? Or does it hurt us? when we think of darkness, dark skin, blackness as inferior, whether it's Abisha skin, whether it's East African skin, whether it's Black American skin, it hurts us all. And the superiority that we can sometimes feel as Abisha people, the exceptionalism, it's something that lives in our head, but in the real world of America, no one sees a difference. When we ask, it's more than racism, I believe. I believe that this is it's an extension of colonization. This is how European whiteness, it's how they maintain colonization. Of course, the Ethiopians have a lot of pride in never being colonized, but if we come to America and we hold all of these beliefs about blackness, it's a mental colonization and it's a maintenance of that power. And we believe sometimes that if we work hard enough, if we focus on academic excellence, spiritual excellence, that we won't feel the inferiority, the less than that Black people have experienced in this country. And the truth is that that's a lie. The best way that we can see the difference is with Asian Americans, who in the color of their skin look lighter. And from the 1800s until now, they've had a very strange experience in America. At times they were considered white. At times they were considered Black. How and when did it change? The truth is, it changed when it was beneficial to white Americans. For them to be white, they would be considered so. When it was no longer beneficial, when it came to land owning and power, then it's better for them to be considered Black. There was a time where Asian Americans were experiencing lynching just the same as African Americans were, publicly. Then the Asian Americans collected together to begin legislation, anti-lynching legislation. That was the first cases of being sued because of lynching to make it illegal. Those were times where Black and Asian Americans' experiences were similar. They were experiencing the same racism, and they were working together against it. Then comes a time, especially after the Civil Rights Movement, that's when a lot of Asian Americans began to immigrate from Asia to the States. And they were not fighting for equality of their skin color because people had already fought that battle for them. The most of Asian Americans in this country today, they came recently. And so they're not connected to Black people historically. And so they came and they, worked hard, and they did a lot to differentiate themselves. We're not Black. We just work hard. That's all that we do. And I think we have a lot of similarity in that language as African immigrants. We just work hard. We don't want to get involved in the politics of it. All right. Now, today, we have this policy in the last year of affirmative action. Affirmative action was a policy for colleges who were accepting mostly white students. It was a policy that encouraged them, because of discrimination, to make sure that you consider race. Is there enough Black people? Is there enough Asian people? Is there enough Hispanic people? Make sure you think about it, because it's easy to discriminate. That was the policy in the past. Now, Asian Americans who are being very successful in this country, they were being overrepresented at the top schools in the States, for example, Harvard. There were so many of them, so because of affirmative action policy, they were saying, okay, we don't need to continue adding Asian Americans, they're already here. And so Asian Americans began to sue the government, and they won, and now affirmative action can no longer be used. So there was a time where Asian Americans used their voice to support African Americans in social justice when it suited them, when it helped them to. Today, they've used their voice to maintain power. We want to be there in Harvard, we don't want to be discriminated against, even though this policy would have been beneficial to other African immigrants, to other people who were not white. It's no longer a policy that can be. It's no longer a policy that can help anybody. And who backed this affirmative action lawsuit? There were Asian people at the head of it, but it was ultimately white people who were really supporting this. And then this is the questions that we have to ask. Who does it serve? These policies that we believe in, these belief systems, who does it serve? Ultimately, in this case, it did not serve it did not serve the greater good. And so we have to be aware of that. As Ethiopians, let's also continue to be aware of who we are serving and who is hurting with our policies. We can work hard. We'll continue to work hard. At the same time, let's not make ourselves an exception. We are just as equal brother and sister in Christ with African Americans. And we are all benefited when we stand together. So that is what I wanted to share with you guys today.
ገብተዋል ፕሮፌሰር